Hello and welcome back to Doctor Who Shot by Shot. Now today I'm going to be taking a look at another sequence from Series 11. It's the closing sequence from Demons of the Punjab. I've made my love for this episode very clear, I think, in a few videos already on the channel. And in particular, it's the final 5 minutes or so that I really like. From Prem's death up to the closing credits. I think they're absolutely stunning. So it felt only right to examine them more closely for my next shot by shot video. Demons of the Punjab, by its very nature, is a heartbreaking episode. It's dealing with themes of nationalism and unity versus division, obviously set at the time of the partition of India. And this sequence is when the whole episode comes to a head. It culminates with Prem's death, this final showdown between Prem and his brother. And in my opinion, this is one of the series' strongest moments. It's an example of direction and cinematography and performance and transitions and music all working together to create something that's a really breathtaking piece of television. This final showdown between Prem and Manesh is shot a lot like a western in these big wide shots that are very sparse, very open, showing off this open space, showing off the landscape, and it creates a massive sense of scale, to the whole sequence. You've got Prem and Manesh and the guys on horseback just there, it's tiny little dots, and this massive landscape. It's also sunset on the cusp between day and night, which suggests this is an important time of day, something important's going to happen here, it's an important moment. It's worth noting that Manesh and Prem are opposed, they're on opposite sides of the frame, and they're both looking in different directions. So you've got Prem on the right hand side, looking to the left, and Manesh and his soldiers on horseback looking to the right. They're directly opposed against each other. It sets them up as two opposing forces with opposing viewpoints and sets up this idea of a showdown. One side is going to win, one side is going to lose. They're not both going to make it out of this alive. And from the start, Prem is outnumbered. He's just there as one person on the right, and on the left you've got Manesh plus 5 other soldiers, all on horseback, all armed. So Prem is doomed from the get-go, really, and these wide landscapes help to give this sense as well that he is helpless, he is vulnerable, he's just this tiny little person in this massive wide landscape. There is no hope for him. The pattern where Prem is on the left and Manesh is on the right is repeated in the more intimate close-ups too. So you've got Prem looking one way, Manesh looking the other, and the soldier who points his gun at Prem is also positioned on the left hand of the frame, like Manesh, pointing the gun to the right. So very clearly, in terms of the way that the shots are structured and the way they're put together and framed, you've got one side on the left and one side on the right. There's this very clear division between the two. And then we cut back to another wide shot matching the first one, although now the soldier at the front has his gun pointed towards Prem, poised to shoot. So like I say, Prem's fate is sealed. He is outnumbered, he's got these people pointing guns at him, and he's just there as a tiny dot. There's no hope for him whatsoever. And then we see the Doctor and her friends. They're watching on in silence. We see their perspective of the same events of the showdown, and then the Thajarians appear in front of this, blocking out their view, as if to say, you can't go and interfere. There's no hope for Prem. His fate is sealed. You can't go anywhere near him. We'll watch over him now. And then they raise their hands over their hearts, that gesture of respect for the dead or the dying, as established earlier in the Thajarian hive, earlier in the episode. So that very much again seals Prem's fate. It confirms that he is about to die. Cutting back to the showdown, we get some more close shots between Prem and Manesh, getting increasingly closer and more intimate, leading up to Prem's actual death. Prem raises his hand, resting it on Manesh's cheek, this lovely intimate moment between them where they actually touch, and there's a beautiful side-on shot of the two of them just there, with a gorgeous lens flare in the background. And although Manesh is still on the left and Prem is on the right, in this side-on shot they're both equal, they both occupy the same amount of each frame. It's not like one of them has an advantage over the other. For one tiny moment they are both equal. But then Manesh slaps Prem's hand away. He's having none of it. He's made up his mind. He's chosen the new India over the old one, division over unity, and he's chosen the new India over his family, over his own brother. This swift movement just confirms that there is no going back. He has made up his mind. And he looks off to the side now. He can't look his brother in the eye. He cannot face him in the eye. Perhaps unable to fully face up to what he's done and the implications of what he's done. We hear the sound of the gun being loaded, and then we see it in close-up, and again, there's a gorgeous lens flare here in the background, almost kind of juxtaposed with the violence of what's about to happen. There's this beautiful landscape and sunset really makes it worse. We then cut back to the Doctor and her friends. This time the Doctor's framed very close with Yaz, and Yaz is breathing heavily, moving back and forth, as if she can kind of feel the weight of this moment, the weight of her own past, and the weight of her own heritage on her. And then that soldier again, blocking out the sun with his gun, blocking out the light, as if to say to Prem, really, there's absolutely no hope left for you. You are doomed. Then the close-up of the trigger, and then the gun shakes, and then Prem is dead. That awful, terrible, tragic moment, Prem's death. Immediately we cut back to the shot of the Doctor and her friends walking away. We see their reactions, we see the Doctor's face, we see her kind of clenched teeth, her clenched eyes closing as the gun sounds, her anger, her distress, and the same for Yaz and the others as well. And they're all taking these kind of heavy steps, which is emphasised by the lack of sound here. The only sound is the music in the background and the gun sounding. There's no sound from the action we're seeing, it's just the music that we can hear in the background, and apart from that it's silent, which really kind of hammers it home, And the music in the background is rising and rising to this climax. Then the Doctor moves forwards out of frame, giving us a closer view of Yaz, who obviously this episode is centred around, and she has the link to Prem and to Umbreen and to the terrible tragedy that has occurred. This moves seamlessly into a shot of the Thajarian hive, which slowly moves in as the two Thajarians appear, and then the hologram of Prem's head appears in that central console in the middle, and then it pans upwards as this hologram moves upwards, rising to join all these other holograms in the roof of the ship, each one representing a casualty of the Partition. It really emphasises the sheer number of deaths, and also kind of grounds Prem's death in the context of the Partition, saying it's not just this one death, it's not just a one-off, there's all these other people that died because of it too. And all the time the soundtrack is building and building in the background, rising, crescendoing, building to that heart-wrenching climax, Singer hitting that note. The visuals of all these heads and the tragedy of the Partition coupled with the soundtrack in the background, which is tragic in itself and beautiful in itself. It's a tremendously powerful moment, poignant, impactful, it stays with you, and this is what makes this sequence for me, and the episode as a whole really. And then another seamless transition from an aerial view of the hive to a similar view of the TARDIS, which is also viewed from above. The circular control panel of the Thajarian hive merges beautifully into the circular shape of the TARDIS console. And then the next shot focuses on Yaz. She's just there in the foreground, the others in the background, the Doctor and her friends. Graham and Ryan are barely relevant anymore. Their reactions don't matter because this is all about Yaz, and to some extent the Doctor too. She comes up to Yaz, walking slowly towards to speak to her, and we get this lovely side-on view of the two of them, which gradually pans in on Yaz, turning into a close-up of her. There's another really smooth transition here, really clever, which is a close-up of Yaz in the TARDIS, her eyes kind of looking down, we see her look down, and then we see a shot of her hands opening up, back home, to reveal the henna pattern design that's on her hands. The two shots are synchronised together really well. There's that continuity between them, that action of looking down, which then goes to the hands. And it seamlessly moves us back from the TARDIS to Yaz's home, from the past back into the present, and into the episode's final scene. Crucially, this is an intimate moment between Yaz and her nanny. It's an epilogue to the episode, a chance to reflect on the events that have taken place. Umbreen is back again in her older guise, as she was at the start of the story, played by the older actress as the actual granny nanny figure, and this creates a continuity between the opening and closing scenes. They kind of framed the whole story, Yaz in the present with her nanny versus Yaz in the past, exploring her nanny's past. In that very final shot, the very final shot of the episode, where they're just looking at each other, there's that kind of knowing look between them, that they're both holding hands. You get the sense that they've got this special relationship, special understanding. Umbreen doesn't know that Yaz has been back into the past. She's got no idea that she actually knows the truth. She said to her, do you want to really know the truth about the watch? And Yaz has said, actually no, it's okay, leave it until another time. But nevertheless, there's that understanding between them, because Yaz does in fact know, and Umbreen isn't aware of that. So there's a certain poignancy to this moment, and to the scene as a whole really, and it ends the episode in a really nice way. It doesn't really give a sense of closure. There's sort of closure for Yaz because she's been back in the past, she's seen what's happened, she knows the truth now. But even so, she's still uneasy about what's happened, and she's not really content, We've sort of got closure from her seeing her nanny again in the present, but even so, the events that took place in the past have this haunting presence, and this after presence, and this after effect on Yaz, and on the audience as well. And I think the transition from this final scene into the closing titles really cements this, with the score that just flows seamlessly, the final cue from that final scene, into the Indian variant of the closing titles. This beautiful, beautiful piece of music, and it's such an inspired choice to have that there. I think it would have been wrong to have the usual closing titles there. I think it would have completely spoiled the poignancy of the moment, and it would have just ruined it. Tonally, it would have completely jarred to have the blaring theme tune come in there instead. So I love that they went with this Indian variation of the closing theme instead, and I think it flows into that really nicely from that final scene. The whole sequence, in all these different parts that I've described, you may have noticed all these transitions that I've singled out, from the Thajarian hive to the TARDIS, from the TARDIS back to Yaz's house, from the past into the present, and then into the closing titles as well. I think it all flows really nicely, really seamlessly, and that just makes it extremely powerful, even more powerful. These final 5 minutes of the episode are beautifully told, beautifully shot, and beautifully presented to the audience. And so they do have this real effect, I think, this real impact, this real powerfulness. They are moving and they are poignant. So do let me know your thoughts on this sequence in the comments section below. I'd love to hear what you think. If there's anything I've said that prompts something in you, or if there's anything that I've missed that you think I should have mentioned, then put that in there as well, and I'll have a look, and we can get some interesting discussions going. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching this video. I do hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you soon for some more new Doctor Who content. Goodbye for now, guys.